It's good to see you, man. Welcome, everybody, live from the Dee Hankins studio. This is a special edition of the Dee Hankins Show called Foster the Future, where I am talking to current, former foster youth that are doing amazing things in the world, people who work with foster youth. It is May, Foster Care Awareness Month, also the month of Dee Hankins. I was born in the month of May, just had a birthday, so we got to celebrate, man. We got to celebrate.
We got to celebrate.
I have with me today a very special friend. Now, obviously, all the guests that come on my show are special to me. Sir, you stand out amongst giants, and you are a giant as well. A very gentle giant. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here with the Dr. Jaiya John. Now, as per usual, I don't normally do accolades, but because this is a special edition of the show and we're highlighting those that are coming up from the ashes, I want people to know that we, as former or current foster youth, those that are watching this, can do really amazing things. Dr. Jaiya John, one, doctor, professor, poet, spoken word artist, philanthropist, humanitarian, lover, gatherer, man, author of many books, life changer, speaker, traveler, international. The list goes on. The list goes on. But that's from my perspective. Dr. Jaiya, I'm going to give you the spotlight. Please introduce yourself. Now, as humble as you are, and you are, at this segment is very important. List it all. I want you to list it all for the people.
Oh, man. Okay, you're going to make me squirm, man. Well, I'm going to thank you, brother. First of all, thank you for the honor. And, it's good to be with family and for a good cause. This is a beautiful series you're doing, man. I appreciate the invitation. I'm happy for all the souls that have joined us. And I'm going to put it this way. I'm going to share some of the things that I'm into. I'm going to put it that way.
Yeah, that works.
Titles. So yeah, I do dabble in love. This world is, this humanity we struggle often with that vocation, with that high spiritual calling of just being love and loving ourselves, loving one another. So I work in that arena, man. I'm doing medicine work and I'm writing, birthing medicine words. That's my passion. That's my breath. Yeah, you can call it speaking, what I do, some of that too. Doing the World Poetry Reading Tour this year. Some use the word mentoring. For me, it's just being in close kinship, especially with our young ones. And for me, that young ones includes folks like you. I'm that old, right? I'm at least 8,000 years. So at this point, young people have always been my heart, and just providing that presence, that care and attention, that uplifting, that nurturing, that love and embrace, believing in them, having faith in them. So that's a big part of who I am. What else did you mention? I got the podcast where I'm just reading from my work for the most part. I'm doing sacred conversations as part of that podcast. We got to do one of those sacred conversations soon too. What else? I feel like I'm forgetting plenty of things, but the gathering you mentioned, just helping us bring back our indigenous ancestral ways of really being intertwined, being close together and sharing instead of being in such isolation. No, am I missing something?
Yeah, you're missing a lot of things, but that covers it.
I will mention the professorship at Howard University in DC, back in the 1800s. That was a beautiful experience. Maybe that was the 1700s. It was a while ago. But just being with those students again on campus was beautiful, beautiful for me, and it was sacred and it was full of love. I miss them. I miss the students, but I feel like I'm still in that role, just not in an institutional sense. And I'm here for revolution. My work is freedom from oppression, freedom from apartheid and caste systems and supremacies and violence, gender violence in particular against women. And yeah, man, I'm just here for the healing. I'm here for the healing and the loving, doing some voice work and doing more of that going forward as part of the storytelling that's necessary, and to just kind of evolve or reclaim the way that we see ourselves and see the world. So these are some of the things, and it is all inspired by childhood and coming of age, and having to heal, doing that work. Psychology, as you mentioned, my background is social psychology, and particularly of intergroup and race relations. So that's been my focus.
You mentioned the healing, right? And there's a passion that you have for healing and people going on a healing journey, which is a personal one and a tough one. We talk about love, in which you are a traveling man, and you've seen both sides. You've seen what it's like to be in a group and a community where they love each other, and you know what it's like to be in a group and a community where they don't love each other, nor do they love themselves. Can you talk about the difference? Can you talk about the benefits of personal healing and what that means to you? What have you seen out in the world that other people may or may not know?
Oh, appreciate the invitation. First and foremost, to me, it all begins with and ends with spiritual life and what it means to heal in a spiritual sense, to be able to resurrect our conscious and subconscious just awareness of that of which we are a part. And so what I see in the world, when I see suffering, which I've been paying close attention to human suffering since I was a child, it's just the way I was designed, and I would witness it and stay with the witnessing, even as it broke my heart, and just see the way we would treat each other around the world and treat ourselves. And even as a child, I was able to recognize that was a spiritual ailment, an ailment of the divine relationship between us and creator, creation, and therefore in the damage, if you will, to those relationships, that union, that oneness, you find human beings just we plunge into despair and distress and depression and self-alienation and aloneness and loneliness and helplessness. All of these overtake us. They begin to overtake us the moment we lose that spiritual conductivity that we are designed to have running through us. And in some ways, that spiritual conductivity is meant to run through us by virtue of our social relationships. And so as we move as humans from being truly tribal and indigenous and just closely tethered with one another out into this modern age of the last 500 years of colonization, industrialization, people traveling great distances for work in order to sustain their family. So now there's separation of the family. And we just gradually lost ourselves more and more, our connection between parents and children, between spouses or lovers or mates, the relationship between neighbors, between community members, and on and on and on. And some of this we know is intentional on the part of those colonizing oppressive forces. They want us separate. But it's just, for me, the spiritual vitality is the beginning and end of healing, and so we can individualistically approach healing with all these different modern modalities and ways we've been taught to think about healing, and we can make progress. But what I've seen in the world is there's only so far we go on that on that glory road if we are going alone. And there are proverbs, African proverbs, and biblical proverbs and holy proverbs about this. That if you want to go somewhere close, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, you got to go together. And that togetherness includes creation and creator, and includes that immersion in all that we are beyond the physical, tangible realm. And when I look around the world and I see the violence and the hatred and the destruction, I see a spiritual disconnection, like the plug has been taken out of the wall, and then we don't know what to do. We just go haywire at that point. It seems to be our human need to be connected to that outlet, to have that source that we're rooted in, not when times are hard, but always and in all ways. Remain rooted in that. And that's also personal testimony for me in terms of healing, because I went from a lowland of absolute terror and pain, coming up, to understanding that I did have the power, the transformative power, to change the way I related to my pain, the way I related to myself, others, life. But that transformation or alchemy was going to require something much bigger than me, much more knowing than me, much more omniscient, omnipresent, eternal. And fortunately for me, that was already in me in a very strong way. I just had to give myself to it over and over again. So, what we see in the world today is what we saw in the world 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago. It's the same suffering. And to me, it has the same source, the same causality, if you will, different modern manifestations. But it's the human story really does not actually change. And so when we ask that question, well, how are we going to heal? We ask that question a lot, but then when the answer is literally abundantly around us and within us, we don't want to turn there. And that is because of how we've been conditioned and because of our fears and sort of like the groupthink or the normalizing of what it means to live life. You and I grew up in this country, so we know you're taught, go to school, get your grades, study hard, matriculate, graduate. You're with these students every day. You understand like how they've been conditioned, and this idea, oh, if I do these things, I'm going to be all right. All of a sudden they're 18, crossing the stage, they're not all right. Then what do? No one gave them a blueprint. Nobody gave them any kind of guideline or illuminating light. And then we see our young ones begin to suffer. If they haven't been suffering already, they're really out in the wilderness and they suffer even more because we taught them that, number one, they don't really even need to heal. They just need to get their grades, and they need to show up and have good attendance and mind their parents and pay heed to adult authority. And you have your own journey with that thing called adult authority. And we know that adult authority is not always the authority we should be following, because adults are just children who've gotten bigger in many cases physically, but having grown soulfully and mentally. So here we are.
You're right. You're right. You're right. It's hard to argue with that when you're out in the field like I am and you see it. And, we oftentimes put our children in front of broken people who are supposed to guide them, but you find out that they too are lost themselves. So, I emphasize a lot personal healing. You've taught me that over the years. It starts with you, it ends with you, right? And if you can find that, the word you love to use is freedom. There's a sense of freedom in healing, right? There's a lot of people that I talk to on, this daily job, this daily career, this daily purpose that I have, that stop at the healing part because it seems to be more difficult to start your healing journey than it is to just stay in your suffering. How do you set one's self free if you feel like, okay, I have to do the hard things? Signing up for therapy is difficult. Unraveling these problems that I felt like I hid very well is difficult. Yet, if I don't do this, I will never experience freedom. What advice do you give people that are just stuck or feel stuck or fear, is their ball and chain?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I appreciate that, man. That's right down my groove. That's my alley. You know, human psychology is a fascinating thing, and that's why I studied it. And one of the things that we learn through empirical research, obviously through personal observation and lived experience, if we want to gather our understanding and truth in those ways. But definitely the research is there, man. And, we have to consider how human psychology works. If you present an opportunity to a human being to heal, whether they take that opportunity or not has entirely to do with the stories that they are telling themselves about who they are, about what this opportunity is in front of them, i.e., therapy, what the possible outcomes will be if they take the opportunity, what the possible outcomes may be if they don't take the opportunity. Fear is always like an overseer trying to wrangle the horses back into the corral. Mm-hmm. So, fear is the overseer. You might say to yourself, man, yeah, I'm gonna find me a therapist. I promise myself I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this next week. This is it. I gotta change. This is too much for me. So that's, something in you recognizing the need, but then the storytelling that has been accumulating in you all of your life is telling you some other things. And a lot of that storytelling, because it's generational and it's coming from other people's trauma and fears, like your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, authority figures in the community, their storytelling is in you. And so those stories overcome your very nubile, newborn story that says, I want to heal. Mm-hmm. And so, for me, in terms of my personal journey and in terms of what I witness in the world, we need to pay much more intimate attention to the internal storytelling that is really determining how a person feels about taking a particular healing journey. Because some of those stories go like this. If I go to the therapist, it's going to open up a whole can of worms. And I can already feel my whole body viscerally reacting to the idea of opening up what I feel successfully suppressed all my life. Am I ready to feel all of that? Who's going to catch me when I fall into all that pain and terror again? Is the therapist going to understand me? Am I going to be judged by my family and friends because I'm going to therapy? Is my partner, my mate, going to judge me or not want to be with me because they're going to see me as weak? What is it going to mean if I heal? And I'm intuiting already that to heal means I'm going to have to release the relationships I've had in my life. A lot of the friendships that aren't really friendships, but I'm emotionally attached to them. My identity is attached to those relationships. And so we're going through these machinations, these narratives of what is this really going to mean? And because it's actually an unknown and a mystery, what it's going to mean to heal, fear has a tendency to take over and hold us back. We don't do enough accounting in society. Like, for example, our children go to school from pre-K all the way through 12th grade, right, for the most part. Nowhere in that educational journey where they're spending most of their time during those years is any adult of any level of skill and empathy encouraging our children, to learn how to take account or assess the cost to them of not healing. Those conversations aren't happening. They're not happening in school. They're largely not happening at home. They're not happening when they're socializing with friends. In other words, okay, man, I'm going through some tough stuff. I lost my parents early on. I've been moved around, moved around, moved around. I've suffered abuse. I've suffered, violation. People disrespected me. I'm not doing well in school. Blah, 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 blah. I got all that happening, but no one's helping me learn how to sit with the totality of my life and learn to ask myself, what is it costing me to stay in this pain and suffering? What will it cost me as I go from teenage years to my 20s and I'm still in the pain and suffering? What will it cost me in terms of wanting to have a family, wanting to have a love mate? What's going to cost me to stay in this pain and suffering? What will it cost me to continue to practice being a victim every day and blaming everybody and everything else for the way my life is going? What will it cost me? Because there is a cost analysis that we do naturally in a psychological sense as people, as human beings, for everything. What's it going to cost me to get in my car and go to the store and pick up some milk? What's it going to cost me to ask this person out on a date? What's it going to cost me to sign up for this class? What's it going to cost me to wear these threads today? What's it going to cost me to go to the gym? The self-exploration of what it costs me to not heal. Who's guiding us in that? So, that's where I begin. That's where I begin, because I understood I had to get a hold of my own psychology in order to align myself or orient myself on a path of healing. I had to say, wait a minute, I can choose. That's a psychological pivot. I can choose to remain in pain the rest of my life, or I can choose to relate to life and myself and others in a different way. And that was a psychological, like, Euro step in basketball terms, right? Boom, I'm going this way, but I can go that way. When that happens to a young person or anyone, the realization of intrinsic power sourced by divine power, sacred power, sourced by all of the resources around us, when the personal determination links up with the collective or macro, let's call it conductivity, when those two things link up, now a person, a human being, is prepared to dare that path of healing. But as long as you're just languishing in this place of I'm in pain, I'm in pain, I'm in pain, it's hard to climb out of that hole. It's very hard. We love convenience, comfort, familiarity. I would say that in many cases as human beings, without judgment, we can say fairly that many of us prefer to remain a slave than to do what is required to be free. So freedom is not as easy a thing as we would like it to be, because it requires us really having to reckon and say, man, this freedom thing might be a beast. My pain is a bigger beast.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always think back to paying off my debt. I knew where I was. I knew this was affecting me. I knew that being in debt was affecting me.
Yeah.
But to climb out of debt, I had to really buckle down. I had to choose reality and say to myself, I'm broke. At the end of the day, like I'm broke, and I'm going to be stuck working to work, right? Like there's a lot of people that I know that I come across that are just working to work. It's like you said, I have to drive long distances. I'm away from my family. I spend hours and hours at work just to go home to try to get some rest so I can go back to work. I got to put gas in my car, not to take my family on vacation, not to take them to the park. I have to put gas in my car just so I can go to work, And when I was thinking about this, because that's a part of healing too, handling certain things that you have put yourself in, so it's consequences that you have to face. And so while I was doing this, I said, okay, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of this debt because it's trickling down, right? The psychology of being in debt and all the stuff that come with that trickle down and seep into places that you don't think it does. Relationship issues, children issues, so on and so forth. Parenting issues, work issues, friend issues, this and that. So I'm like, man, I got to get out of here. It was hard because now I'm going to work, I'm getting paid, and I'm seeing whole checks going to paying my debt, which was scary. Right, because I'm like, oh, I gotta have a little something for this, or what if something pops up? Right, those stories that I'm telling myself, something's gonna pop up, and I'm not gonna be able to have money for it, and so on and so forth. But I did the hard stuff, and it was hard. And when I paid off my debt in October, the first 2 months of me being debt free were probably the scariest months of my life because I'm used to having my money go places, right? I'm used to checks coming in and just automatically it's going to go here and automatically it's going to go here. And I know that at the end of 2 weeks or 2 days after I get paid, I'm only going to have $100 left. I was so used to that. So when I didn't have to do that anymore, it was uncomfortable. Yeah. And it was very scary because I'm like, oh, what do I do with this money? I have extra money. What do I do with it? Do I have to go out and buy something? You're right, because your body is so used to being in that space that you don't know what to do with freedom. I didn't know what to do with my freedom, and it was scary. And it was so scary that I'm just like, oh, let me just go buy some things, so I feel more comfortable. And that's just debt, right? So I can imagine how that is with abuse, how that is with trauma, how that is with growing up in foster care. The beauty of it, though, is after those 2 months, freedom started to become very real to me. I started to realize, I have a choice now. I can buy this if I wanted to, but I don't have to. Yeah. I can go here if I want to. If I want to. I'm not obligated to do that. I'm not obligated to give this person or go see this person or have to put on a fake smile to go serve this person. I don't have to do those things. And so after a few months, the settling into freedom became more real. And then life started to take on its own play. That book is gone, right? Now in financial space, when I talk about that, I'm in this freedom spot, like this book of freedom in which, something comes up, write a check. And there's no anxiety, there's no pressure, there's no those stories that I used to tell myself, I can't afford that. What if something happens? This and that, they're gone, right? Now it's just like, if something happens, I'll write a check. Why? Because I'm free. So I want to segue into something that's very important. Your book, Freedom, Words for Your Brave Revolution, speaks to the power of words. Can you share specific instance where words played a crucial role in your own journey towards freedom?
Thank you. And that was a beautiful testimony, Dee. That was a beautiful testimony. And the metaphor or analogy is so easily applicable to all areas of our life where we have this transitional territory we must move through, this liminal landscape that we must move through, where we're moving from what has been and what we have known into something new, and the unsettling that comes with that, the sensation of being out over a ledge without anything beneath your feet can be overwhelming. And this is why we say to heal is a faith walk. To change your life in any meaningful way is a faith walk, because at some point you're leaping. At some point you're not sure how it's going to turn out, but you're taking the risk. And as it applies to the power of word, and then you're asking about my own journey with the word, I can identify for you, numerous occasions where word itself was transformative. I've heard people say, words are words. I mean, like, what's the big deal about a word? Well, for me, existence began with a word. So from the very beginning, word reigned. Word created this. Word created
Word.
this. Word. If words did not have power, we would not have used them in such a central way in our human existence and journey. We have used words to communicate our love to one another. And so that right there is a foundation of civilization, is it not? We use word to communicate love to our children. We use word to communicate that we are in pain, and not always a verbal word, not always even a written word. In our mother's womb, we were communicating word with our knees and our elbows to get our needs met. If she was eating something that did not agree with us, we would let her know. That was our word. If she was in a communication, a conversation with somebody, and we didn't like the tone of that person's voice, how they were speaking to our mother, we would let her know through the motion of our body. So that was word. We are natural communicators. We use movement, dance, if you will, is our word. Our tear is our word. Our heartbeat is our word. One of the most ancient and primal words is our heartbeat. And you can lay your head down on someone's chest and feel the pronouncements and announcements in word. It's poetry, it's psalm, it's scripture. I've had many words spoken to me that because of where I was in my journey, those words decimated me. They destroyed me. They crushed me. So that's a kind of power that words can carry as well. A word can part the waters and let the blessings come through. I had words spoken of me that planted seeds of self-belief in me at times when I didn't believe. I had words spoken to me that said, I believe you have what it takes to go on from university and get your doctorate degree. It had never occurred to me until that word was spoken. I hadn't even considered, because just my upbringing, I always thought of myself as I'm black, I'm native, these kids are smarter than me, they know more than me somehow, I'm missing something, I'm just trying to do my best, but I'm not up there on that level until that word was spoken that said, oh wait, you can. I remember my grandfather back in New Mexico, I was sitting on his lap as a young child, and I had shared with him a story I'd written in elementary school. I think it was about a kingdom, two kingdoms of ants at war, red ants and black ants. I was already trying to work out these intergroup relations as a child, and why we harm each other in the ways we do, the genocide of our human side. And I shared the story with him, this like third, fourth grader story about these ants going at it. And he yelled out, this is in my adoptive family. He yelled out to my father and he said, this boy's going to be a writer. I was a child, and so I wasn't conscious of what that even meant. But years later, the memory stayed with me, which means the seed stayed with me, which means somebody through their word gave me the ingredients for believing that I could write, that I had something to offer. There were words that allowed me to see the peril I was in by the choices I was making. There were words that reassured me when I was making different choices, newer choices. There was reassurance. There was validation. There was confirmation. There was word coming from above. There was word coming from the trees and the breeze and the land and the waters and the fire. There was word coming from all corridors of my life, man, and it was coming from within me. And when I began to learn how to guard in my own words, care for my own words, so that I wasn't just passively letting this jungle of self-destruction grow in me, these words of, self-destruction, these words of fear and helplessness. When I began to learn how to guard my own words, everything changed. Everything changed. The dawn was brighter. The stars were more vivid. The water tasted better. The whole of my life like became a celebration. I went from pain to parade. I went from like the shallow waters to the beautiful deep. I went from an inarticulation and a muteness and a silence to this. I went to voice and song. I went to soliloquy. I lifted when I realized, man, if I care for my words, not only does it bless me, but it seems to bless others.
Mhm.
It shocked me at first. It shocked me. The words you know as a father that you speak to your children, those words are as big as the sky, and they last just as long in the soul of a child. And we know this because we know the words that were spoken to us when we were young. So I think that words were instrumental in my healing journey, man. And that's why I do believe, man, when I share a word, as long as I feel that it didn't come from me, but it came from the one who brought me here and gave me breath and heartbeat and life. When I feel that I have, managed to be a kind of vessel and the word has come through, I have seen over and over again the evidence. If we're looking for evidence, that word is power and medicine. So that book, Freedom, Medicine Words for Your Brave Revolution, it's because I know that it's eminently difficult to be a revolutionary and to work for freedom. It is frightening. It is terrifying at times. And so here's some word. And what I receive back is people sharing that, your words have been a balm for me. Your words have been a salve for me. Those are biblical words for me. Those are sacred words. So if someone's saying your words have been sacred in my journey, that catches my attention. It reroots me in my devotion to this word journey. That, hey man, it's not that I have anything to teach. It's that I'm overflowing with love. And if I let love through, love will teach you.
That was beautiful, man. Thank you. The way you are with words, man. I can't be the only one that's listening to you, and then you say something, and I just can't help but to smile because the way you bring in things, the jungle of destruction, learning to garden my own word garden, like learning to water my own word garden. Come on, man. That's I'm not the only one hearing this, right? Right, y'all? Like everybody who's watching this is hearing this and going, wow, when you put it that way, it makes sense. You clearly have a passion for the healing journey, but that passion only comes from experience, right? Like this experience of you've tasted it. You've tasted freedom. You've worked for freedom. You've worked for healing. You've done the work, and which allows you to do more of the work. You said something in there that really struck a chord with me. I remember one day I was talking to a school. They wanted to bring me in, and this particular school had a principal who really didn't believe in the power of having a speaker. Maybe they got burned before, maybe they brought someone in and it didn't turn out well, which happens. There's some speakers out there that are just terrible. They just do it for money. There's no passion behind it, so on and so forth. And that really rubbed me the wrong way for a few reasons. I've witnessed kids, students, middle school students rip up suicide notes because of what I said to them. I've seen high school students that have had traumatic experiences with parents get the confidence to sit their dad down and say, hey, you're ruining my life.
Yeah.
Like you're hurting me.
Yeah.
And rekindle those relationships. I've seen adults and parents that come to a parent night with DJ and DJ says something to them, and these parents are in tears and go, yo, I have not been doing right by my children, and I'm going to wake them up tonight, as soon as I get home. I'm going to hug them. I'm going to tell them I love them, and I'm going to apologize for what I've done. When you say there's power in words, I feel that because I have also witnessed it, which is why I can't stop speaking.
Yeah.
Now, there's a flip side to every coin, right? Biblically, life and death is in the power of the tongue. And you spoke a lot about the life part, but there is a hurtful part as well. You know, when you say certain things to certain people, I tell this in my trainings, you know, in my coaching, everything that we do, we say, we wear, we listen to, we watch on TV, the way that we act, the way that we interact with people has been shaped by what someone has said to us in the past, right? Like you said, oh, you're you know, you're black, or you're not going to have this, or you're not going to have that. I grew up thinking it's impossible for us to be successful because I'm a black man in America. You know why? Because somebody told me that over and over and over and over again. And this all goes back to what you said in the beginning of this show, which was you have to take a step back and go, what stories am I telling myself? What words? Stories are an accompaniment of words put together that makes sense to you. What words am I constantly replaying in my head that's continuing to put me in this spot that I am, whether it be suffering or, you know, the not being able to heal, anger, trauma. We all have trauma, especially when we talk about foster youth. We all have trauma, but you can also, just like someone can control what you wear, say, so on and so forth through words, you can also do the same thing with your trauma and your fear and your healing. You can tell it. And like you said, water your own garden of words so that you can produce fruitfulness in what you say to yourself that will eventually lead you to a place of healing and freedom. Is that correct?
Oh, hey to the men, hey to the women, hey, that's beautiful. And you used one of my favorite words, fruitfulness. I have spent my life paying close attention to how my own words have caused hurt and harm. And it doesn't mean that I then have become some sort of android or robot that's perfectly programmed in terms of, you know, the word expression that comes from me. There is no such thing as that. By nature, communication is organic, which means it's messy. But I did have the opportunity to learn just by bearing witness to myself, you know, just by bearing witness to my own path. Not only the destructive potential within words, but my corrective potential, my ability to go inside and do the work that would change the way. This is the thing. You see, oftentimes in the world, people will say something really hurtful, racist, sexist, ugly, and then they'll say, that's not who I am. They'll come back, right? They'll circle back around. And it's oftentimes a public figure, right? So there's a public accountability. And because they're
Diddy.
getting roasted online, they're like, that's not who I am. That was a bad moment. They're making all these excuses. My thing is, if it came out of you, then it was in you. This is almost like a physics to our holistic or spiritual design, is that it doesn't come out of you if it wasn't already in you. So it is who you are. And a more helpful and healing response to being hurtful, and especially in a public or collective space, is to just be accountable and say, I said it, therefore it was in me. I may not have known it was in me, but clearly it was in me. And I feel horrible about that. And so I'm going to do the work necessary to get it out of me. You can take a fallow ground, poisoned ground. You can take a dead orchard and bring it to life. We have that capacity when we are connected to our source, when we are not just transactionally trying to change so that we have, more impressive social outcomes where people will think of us better or like us more. If our intention and our motive for transforming ourselves internally is pure and coming from a place of compassion and empathy and a desire to be a better ancestor, then we have what we need to make that journey to turn our junkyard, our junkyard of word and language and thought and idea and values, to turn that into paradise, to turn it into a botanical garden, to turn it into a lagoon, a waterfall. We can turn what is ugly into what is beautiful. That has been given to us and it's been shown to us repeatedly, repeatedly.
Yeah.
But there is such a fruitfulness in words, man, such a fruitfulness. I studied the social psychology of identity when I was in graduate school. So I was just drawn to that because I had already understood the way I think about myself, how I see in myself, my identity really does determine pretty much everything about my existence in this world. And so, and when you study the psychology of identity, you see to what degree humans are creatures of identity.
Mm.
And when when we have the cause, we see Bahini, we see Adaya there, and bless you, sis. Good to have you here. When we see and when we realize just how much identity plays a role in our human existence, it also is a doorway that shows us how to get out of this trap of being so destructive with ourselves and with others. The violence that's happening right now in the world is a violence of identity. It's a violence of group identity, of nationality, of supremacies, racial identity, ethnic identity, religious identity. And so, as you said, that which takes us in beautiful directions can also take us in horrible directions. But to me, that truth is a hopeful truth. Because if we used words and story and narrative to get into this horrible, horrific, violent, abusive place as a humanity, we can use the same ingredients and methodology to get ourselves out. We don't have to just languish there and think, oh, this is helpless. We're just always going to be this way. Now, we literally spoke ourselves into this and we can speak ourselves out.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that is, again, the facing oneself, right? The mirror is either your best friend or your greatest enemy. I've always said that. And it's either going to highlight what you're doing right. You can look at it and say, yes, I'm the person that I want to be, or you look at it or you avoid it because it shows the person that you don't want to, or that you are, but it's not matching up to who you want to be. And so we can reverse all of the bad things that have happened to us, but you have to knock down that door. You have to go on that healing process. Each person has to make the decision to say, I want to heal, without taking offense or defense to somebody pointing out that you are not healed, or that your brokenness hurt me. I am hurt by your unwillingness to heal, because your pain and your trauma and your suffering affect me deeply. I see this in relationships. I see this, I've been in situations where that has been me, where my pain and my trauma and what somebody told me and what society told me as a man, right? You can't care about nothing. Like, you just got to do you. Go just get the money and do what you can and forget everybody else and don't trust people and so on and so forth. And those words had a deep impact on me because, one, I grew up in foster care. So I spent 18 years in survival mode, right? And then two is, okay, as a society, this is what I'm supposed to do as a black man in this country. And it was a lie. It was a lie. It's not true. And so I've seen examples of successful foster youth. I've seen examples of successful black men that have gone on to do wonderful things, that are loved by their families, that are great fathers. One of the things that really impacted me growing up, or when I had my first kid, was in high school. And I'm thinking, oh, there it is. There I am, just a stereotypical, so on and so forth. And it like that stuff impacted me until I took my healing journey to say, hey, why am I like this in my relationships? Like, what happened to me that causes me to be this way in my relationships? And so I want to kind of ask you one more question before we open it up to any questions in the comments for some Q&A. You have said some things that if you're watching this right now live, you're really going to have to sit with what Jaiya is talking about. And I always tell people you got to choose reality. And right now, where you're at in your life right now, relationships are falling apart, financially unstable, maybe mentally unstable. You're anxious, you're depressed, you're stuck in a relationship you don't want to be in. Your marriage is going down the drain. Your kids are wilding out. You hate your job, whatever the case may be. You have to sit down and go, what stories am I telling myself? Am I really on this healing journey, or am I putting things in place to avoid this healing journey? Am I working more because I don't want to sit at home and have a conversation with my wife or be around my kids? Am I out on the streets clubbing and drinking my life away because I don't want to face reality? You got to sit down and think, like, are you cultivating a jungle of destruction, or are you taking a step back and watering the garden of your own words, not what somebody gave to you, right? Like you didn't go to Home Depot and someone said, hey, use this. They don't care about where you're at in life when you're talking about consumption. You have to care first about where you're at in life. And depending on how old you are, depending on the severity of your trauma, the longevity of your suffering and pain, the comfort, how comfortable you are in your suffering and pain, your healing process might be that much more difficult, right? But in the end, it's that much more. You taste freedom at the end of a very painful experience or a very painful life. Tastes so much sweeter. You mentioned The Gathering, reviving traditional storytelling practices. How do you see these practices being particularly effective in fostering social healing and liberation in today's world, right? Because at the end of the day, I hear you, and what I hear you saying is socially, we need to heal socially. But what we don't understand, or at least in my opinion, or what I see on my daily journey, is we don't believe we are part of society, right? Like society is this foreign object. Society is them. I talk about this all the time because it made sense to me. I was watching some Instagram reel, like those mind-blowing questions, like, is water wet, or whatever the case may be. And one of them said, you're not in traffic, you are traffic. And I started sitting there like, yo, that makes complete sense. And then I started to hear things, right? Oh, society needs to do this. Society needs to do that. If only society could, so on and so forth. And it's just like, you're not in society, you are society, right? So when you talk about healing, social healing, as a societal entity, you're literally talking about a bunch of individuals. So again, The Gathering and storytelling practices, how do you see these how do you see these progressing through the social healing and liberation of today's world?
Thank you. That's also a beautiful invitation, your question as constructed. I appreciate that, man. There was a man named Naeem Akbar, and he used to write about breaking the psychological chains of slavery, because he understood that slavery is psychological. Now, obviously, things can happen to us and do happen to us in life, right? The instant that something happens to us, we begin storytelling about what that experience is, what it was. We began to language it and give it ideas and adorn it and clothe it. We give it a hat and shoes. We give it sunglasses. We give it a name. It becomes a living thing within us as we give it word, as we give it story. The moment something happens, a thing we could not control, where we have missed dearly having intact generational ancestral ways of being together. What that has cost us is many things, but one thing is the ability to identify the moment that no choice becomes choice in an experience that we have. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, no choice, but instantly that experience moves into the land of choice, which is your response, your reaction. You said you had that realization that you're not in traffic, you are traffic. The Vietnamese Buddhist monk and teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, and his students called him Tay. He passed away not too long ago in his 90s, but you know, he had a beautiful life journey, and he would share this story about how when the first time he came to New York City, it was distressing to him to be in traffic and hear people violently honking at each other constantly without pause, it seemed. And, you know, he had lived the life of a monk in a quiet monastery. Peace was so easily accessible. And he found himself experiencing a very jarring culture shock that affected his well-being. But because of his lifelong training, his own understanding of his capacity to use his mind to interpret his reality in ways that served him and all living things, he began to apply that lifelong training, and he came to understand, I don't have to let the noise of traffic, the honking of the horns distress me. I can associate those in the way that I have experienced the temple bells back home in the monastery. And so he began to practice every time he heard the cars honking. He told himself that's the temple bell ringing. And he practiced and practiced until he got to the place where the honking of the cars calmed him, just like the temple bells did in his monastery. So he was practicing and showing for us the ability and capacity that we have to take what seem to be very difficult things and relate to them in ways that serve our well-being, serve the well-being of others. So when you ask about what is it about gathering together that can help us to heal collectively and individually, we have to understand the psychological chains of our slavery. We have to know our history. We have to read. We have to learn. We have to listen. This is a culture, and because this culture has spread around the world, you could say much of the world's culture now is it's an oppressive culture in the sense that it speaks, it thrusts. Everyone is thrusting outward with their opinion and their rage and their prejudice and their ignorance and their blind spots. But we have not been practicing for 500 years the art of listening, compassionate listening. It's not transactional. It is not motivated by gain. The only motive of compassionate listening, and this is what Thich Nhat Hanh also taught, the motive of compassionate listening is collective well-being. I want you to be well as you share with me, and as a result of sharing with me, I want myself to be well as a result of listening to you. I want all living things to be well as a result of what you are sharing and the fact that you care to share and the fact that I care to listen. I care to bear witness to what you're expressing from your heart and soul. I'm not sitting there pretending to listen so that I can prepare my rebuttal like we are in war, lobbing grenades at each other. I'm not pretending to listen so that I can figure out something clever to say in response to you to get the upper hand, or to figure out how I can take a jab at you. I'm not pretending to listen so that you think that I'm someone who cares about you and that I care to listen. And these are the motives that I release because they are conditioned motives. And I just go back to what I was designed to be for you in that moment, which is a witness, a validating, affirming witness. Now, in our history, we could see 500 years of colonizing violence around the world in a particular form of colonization, because it's always existed, right? What did it take from us? Everywhere that the colonizers have gone, they've taken from the indigenous people our stories,
Mhm.
our language, our ability to gather, our joy, our restfulness, our innate self permission to rest, to be at balance, to not feel like we have to constantly be doing and producing like we are, animals of labor for the master. They took away from us freedom and levity and laughter. They took away from us intimacy and free flowing love. They took away from us our lands, which were our temples, our sanctuaries, our safety. They took away from us the intactness of our families and our homes. They took away from us our memories, our histories. They took away from us our ceremonies and our rituals. They took away from us our music and our dance and our drum. They took away from us our proximity, our ability to be skin to skin, shoulder to shoulder, to hold hands together. They took away from us our generational intimacy, to have grandparents and great grandparents in the same spaces as their grandchildren and great grandchildren. They took away from us stillness, calmness, patience, endurance. They took everything that was beautiful and healthful about us was taken away as a function of the colonizing machinery. So when you ask what is the value of gathering together for our collective and individual healing, it is for us to reclaim all of those things that have been taken from us. When we gather together, we remember how we were meant to be, individually and collectively. When you just get in that circle and it feels safe and loving, and the music starts flowing and the drums start drumming and the people start humming and the shoes come off and the barefoot dancing gets to commencing, and there's a rhythm and there's a cadence and there's a poetry and a language and there's an affinity, and we're gazing at each other across through the flames of the fire, illuminating our souls, and we're learning to exhale and trust that I can share my pain in this circle and my joy. It helps us, because if we're alone as individuals, it's very difficult to see the totality of our suffering and the roots of our suffering. We can say, I want to stand in front of the mirror as an individual and reckon with myself, but it's so much easier to see the reflection of who we are when we are in togetherness, because each of those souls becomes a mirror. And now we have a multitude of mirrors instead of one mirror. And it's all lovingly pouring back into us who we are, the truth of our condition. If we're sad, the mirrors in the circle will show us that we're sad, because they can see it in us. They will show it to us in nuanced ways, nonverbal communication. If we're depressed, if we're angry, the group will show us. If we have something beautiful to share that makes the group feel good, they will let us know in their ways. So we gather. I have a passion for us gathering, because that's what was taken from us, gathering. What happens, man, anytime a group of Black people in a city start to get together and have a good time? What happens next? You tell me. What happens when a group of Black people start to gather repetitively, especially in certain clubs, in certain spaces, certain neighborhoods, certain parks? We're cooking out, we're having a good time. The family's there, the children are running around free, feeling good. The adults feel good. The adults feel validated. The Black men feel not like animals, but they feel beautiful. The Black women feel beautiful. What happens next? You tell me.
Man, the community gets stronger.
Yeah. And then the community gets stronger. And then how does the oppressor respond?
Oh, they try to tear it down. They try to tear
So,
it down.
so that's all the proof we need to know that gathering is powerful and
You
valuable
know,
for us.
now that you mentioned that, there was a post. There's this event that happens in Texas, where the dads get together. It's like stroller dads or something like that. Dads and strollers or something like that. Hundreds of dads just come out and they got their strollers, they got their babies, they're just having a good time, you know. And in this clip, you see two strangers that are just looking at each other. You got kids, I got kids, and they just dap each other up, you know. And immediately you go into the comments, and what do you see? Somebody's just like, well, I don't see any white dads. And then, you know, the owner of this club goes, all dads are welcome, bro. You know, you don't have to. And because you said that, it's just like, I see that all the time. We can't get together and have a good time without somebody feeling like, oh, you know, I feel left out, or I feel this. Are you a dad? Do you have a stroller? Come out. That's all you need to do, right? To build community. And that's it. Instead of poisoning this beautiful moment, right? Just ask the question. You don't have to be accusatory. Hey, man, like, I live in Texas. You think I can come out with my stroller? Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, this is a bit off topic, but you know, in the same realm, I believe it was Farrakhan that said, we're not violent. You know, we're not the ones that are, you know, when we get together, that are unwelcoming to other ethnicities and other races. Now, are we, you know, violent as a, you know, in subgroups, in some pockets? Are there instances in which media, you know, tend to shine the light only on this particular group that do, you know, show violence and things like that? When was the last time, Jaiya, you watched the news and saw a group of black dads, hundreds of them, pushing strollers, going on a walk with their kids versus some drive-by? How often do you see, which one do you see most of in the media? Right.
You see, and
which is your exact point, right? Like, what does the oppressor do? They don't want to show that. They don't want to show, you know, the narrative, at least that I hear, are, you know, we're deadbeats. We don't want to spend time with our kids. Like, we don't do this. And it's the exact opposite, especially for me. You know, I'm in the schools, I'm doing all this. When I do parent nights and things like that, you know who's showing up? Dads are showing up. They're coming to these parent nights. They're on their sons, like they're watching. It's not just basketball. You know, they're at the debate. They're at the community meetings. They're, you know, doing all this stuff, but you don't see that. And it's just like what you said, because when we get together and we're having a good time and things are going well, who comes and tries to destroy it? So that was spot on, man. That was spot on.
Yeah. I mean, you know, something is powerful and healing and beautiful if the ones who have historically needed to hold down your people are threatened by it. That threat is all the evidence you need to know. If you're sitting there wondering, you know, what's the value of me gathering together with people who actually care about me and love me and whom I love, who we share kinship, we get each other, we feel each other. What's the value of that? You just have to look to what happens when you do gather. See the responses. It will tell you everything. The storytelling about us as violent, you know, when I lived in Nepal, I had the most amazing experience of my life over there, and I lived with a host family who's my family to this day, and I love them dearly. And when I was leaving from living over there, my brother in the family, he wrote me this beautiful letter in this book, and it was a memento to take with me. And he acknowledged to me that before he had met me, because there weren't a lot of African American folk over there at that time, they were just like, we were very foreign to them. I was foreign. But he said, yeah, all I knew about black people was that you all are violent and aggressive. That's what I was told. This traveled around the world to a kingdom, a tiny kingdom in the Himalayas that had no experience with black people, but the narrative traveled. So this goes back to this question again about what's the value of us gathering. It's because we also, when we're together, we have the opportunity to share our stories, hold them in the light, weave them together, be affirmed in our stories, our true stories. Not the false stories, not the media stories, not the colonizer stories, not the oppressor stories, not the hatred stories, not the racist stories, not the ignorant stories, not the fearful stories. When we are together, we have the opportunity to pour all of our divine sacred stories into that pot, let it stew, and then we all, the generations, feast from that. So it's a fortifying practice. To gather is ceremony and ritual, and it fortifies us, man. You know, we're willing to go to the gym and get our lift on because we believe that something good will come from that, that will benefit us. But where is our belief when it comes to the idea of coming together as a community to heal something, to address something, right? We that's human psychology again. If we believed, we would do it. We don't believe. And so we have to reclaim our belief that we do have the ability to heal together. We have to reclaim that belief.
And we have to, you know, I'm going to add to that. We have to heal. You know, if you're watching this, I want you to pass that on. Like, you have to heal. You got to heal yourself. You have to heal your kids. You have to heal from what you're doing. It's not an option. You can't make it an option. It has to be something that needs to be done. And Jaiya, you hit this on the head earlier in this show where it's like every day you have to make the decision every day. That's your healing journey. And then when you get to a point where you feel healed, you then have to continue the work to maintain staying in the land of freedom, staying in the breath of freedom, in the realm of freedom. And that's going to come by hanging out and gathering with people who want the exact same thing, right? Because this is what happens. You take a certain someone who goes through the healing process, that is going to shine a light. You are now going to glow. You're going to get out of your dimness. That gray cloud over your head is going to dissipate, okay? And the sun is going to be radiating on you, and people are going to say, wow, how did you do it? Why are you, a year ago, you were crying all the time, you were depressed, yada, yada, and now I see you, you're smiling, you got a song in your heart. Like, how, I want some of that. I want some of that light. I want some of that, because humanity, by definition, by creation, Jaiya, is not meant to be cast in darkness. We are literally meant to be lights. We're told you are the light at the top of the hill. Do not hide this. As a matter of fact, you can't hide it, right? You can't hide it because it is already within us. But we can suppress this glow with trauma and pain and suffering. So continue to be a light. Jaiya, thank you so much, man, for sharing your wisdom here with this episode of Fostering the Future. As always, I want to open it up to questions from the audience that you can answer personally. And before we get out of here, we're a little bit over time, man. But wow, but we're over time, but none of this was wasted at all.
Yeah, I love you, man. Thank you.